All right, Ms. Dzerowicz.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I want to say thanks to the department for being here today. In my riding of Davenport, which is downtown West Toronto, climate change was one of the top two issues that I heard during the recent campaign. And one of the key things that they have asked our national government is to see whether or not we could move faster on eliminating fossil fuel subsidies. So I want to know how far along are we on eliminating fossil fuel subsidies, and can we go faster?
Perhaps I could begin by categorizing them. I see the world being the tax policy guy as tax and everything else. So I focus on tax all the time, which makes me pretty boring. But there you go. So maybe I'll speak to the tax component of that. Back in I think 2007, the G20 committed to essentially rationalize inefficient fossil fuel subsidies over the medium term, and I guess in more recent years, I think in the last 2 or 3 years, that's been crystallized to by some countries, including Canada, to mean 2025.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just assuming inefficient subsidies are those that promote sort of emissions, GHG emissions.
There's a whole debate about what inefficiency means, okay. And essentially, I could go through a whole range of criteria.
We don't have time,
perhaps
unfortunately.
So we from a tax perspective, we essentially, well, every year we publish a report on federal tax expenditures and we table it in Parliament, and it's about 300 pages long. And it identifies every deviation from a benchmark tax system, a benchmark tax system being the most basic tax system. So in a way, you can say any tax expenditure is in essence a subsidy in one way or another. So we have a pretty good handle, and we identify in that report which ones relate to the fossil fuel sector. And when you look back over the past decade or so, at one point you could say, looking at the measures that have been eliminated, phased out, or in the course of being phased out, about eight significant measures are in that category. And then when you look at what else relates to the fossil fuels industry, there's very little left. There is essentially one measure that we identify in there that relates both the mining sector and the fossil fuel sector.
So because I'm running out of time, I'm really sorry, just because I do have two other questions. Is it that we're 80% of the way there, 90% of the way there? What's your best guess?
I think from the measures in the tax system, we've made very, very significant progress, and there's very little left.
There's very little left.
That is effectively.
So I can go back to Davenport and say that we have largely eliminated fossil fuel subsidies.
I think that's a fair in the tax system, which I'm speaking to.
Okay, thank you very much. My second question is, and this is again another thing that's a topic within my riding, is whether or not we have started making budget decisions based on impact on climate change. So, our budget decisions moving us towards moving Canada to being more sustainable and achieving our Paris Accord targets. Is that something we're systemically doing yet?
I think, from a departmental perspective, we analyze every budget proposal through a strategic environmental assessment, which includes those considerations.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's good news. That's good to know. I know that they'll be very happy to hear that. The last question I have is just based on a comment that one of my colleagues across the way mentioned, where it was said that we have to clearly define middle class before we're able to actually create policies that would positively impact the middle class in Canada. And yet I note that we have introduced a tax cut that you have earlier indicated that if we should pass it, would actually benefit over 20 million Canadians, which is the broad swath of Canadians, and also eliminate taxes for 1 million of them. And so my question to you is, do we need to clearly define middle class in order for us to be able to actually create policies that broadly benefit Canadians?
I guess building on what my colleague, Mr. Leswick, said earlier, given the challenges in clearly defining the middle class, you wouldn't want to wait until you had that definition before
Right.
you.
And we obviously haven't. Yes, thank you.